in the last week, we've heard a lot from Obama, given the State of the Union address, as well as other interviews that he's done in the last week. But Obama has declined to comment last Friday as to whether he believes that marijuana should be reclassified from a Schedule I narcotic to something less restricted and less serious. As of now, it's a Schedule I narcotic, which states that it has no accepted medical value. He did say, however, that such a change would not come from his office, and he wouldn't be willing to make such a change himself. He said that it is a decision for Congress. However, the DEA does have the power and the authority to reschedule drugs. But Obama, when confronted with this little factoid, seemed to deny that completely and skirted around the issue. Later, a tweet from the White House of National Drug Control Policy said that the Attorney General can change the drug's designation from a Schedule I narcotic, but the tweet also said that that would not likely happen based on, quote, current science. I'm not exactly sure what current science they're reading into right now. Based on current science, I would think that releasing the restrictions against marijuana would be a practical and sensible move to make. However, when the interviewer asked if Obama would support a rescheduling, he seemed to kind of skirt and dodge around the issue entirely, saying a lot without really saying anything at all. What he did say is that marijuana use is, quote, subject to abuse just like alcohol and should be treated as a public health problem and challenge. However, that's not what we're doing in this country insofar as marijuana, is it? Marijuana is listed as a Schedule I narcotic, the most restricted classification that there is, while tobacco and alcohol are not listed as in the schedule listing at all. Cocaine, opium, poppy, morphine, codeine are Schedule II narcotics because of their currently accepted medical use. A synthetic version of THC called dronabinol, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, has caused numerous ill side effects, but is only listed as a Schedule III, even though it is derived from THC, the active ingredient in marijuana. The Congress, the DEA, and the Attorney General all have authority to change or request or push for change in the classification of marijuana, but none of them seem to show an interest or a dedication to do so, of course. No news there, really. The scheduling of the drug started in 1970, which was actually supposedly meant to be a temporary move pending studies to resolve uncertainty about marijuana at the time. However, over the last 40 years, none of the studies that have been presented are considered a grand enough scale to impress upon Congress to change the classification of marijuana. But funding for larger studies are consistently denied, especially when it might further prove marijuana's beneficial medical uses and effects. So Obama has basically taken the stance to take no stance and refuses to do anything about the situation. One bill pending in the House right now, but not even introduced in the Senate, would end prohibition entirely, removing it from the schedule listing entirely, much like alcohol and tobacco. But it's seeing as how things are going right now, it's not looking too positive that that's going to actually move forward. However, if Obama truly means what he says about treating marijuana the way tobacco and alcohol are treated, then he should be in favor of this legislation, of course. Meanwhile, we have marijuana being legalized in Colorado, in Washington. We have it medically accessible in California. Newly, medical marijuana has been legalized in Massachusetts and other states, and even the NFL players and pro marijuana activists are challenging the NFL on their stance against marijuana now that the two main competitors in the Super Bowl, one's from Colorado, one's from Washington. So obviously that conversation's come to the forefront. And the Super Bowl this year will include 5 ads that challenge the NFL's stance on marijuana and their policies against marijuana. One ad challenges that marijuana arrests annually make up for as many people as there are Super Bowl attendees, which is approximately 750,000 people annually arrested for marijuana each year. Another ad points out that marijuana is safer than beer and football. And another ad says, quote, marijuana is less harmful to our bodies than alcohol. Why does the league punish us for making the safer choice? The NFL currently has a zero tolerance policy on marijuana use and has suspended many players for using the substance. But, there are some dissenting opinions. Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll and NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell have both suggested that the NFL should start allowing players to use medical marijuana as needed and should relax their policies against marijuana. So what do you guys think about Obama's stance against marijuana, the bill that's going through the House right now, future legislation, and also this new NFL ad campaign that's just come out? Jeff, what do you think?
Well, I just came up with a word for this, and that's hypocrisy. Basically, Obama, hypocrisy, slam them together, you've got hypocrisy. And that's exactly what this is. And it's classic. This is classic Barack Obama. I have no stance on this. I'm just going to let someone else do it. Why? Because I don't want to be the change guy. I said I was going to be the change guy, but I'm not the change guy. I'm just going to pretty much not do anything about this. I'm going to say some good words and some nice rhetoric about it, like, oh, well, it's really not all that dangerous, but I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to touch it. It's not going to look good on my legacy. Okay, and so classic Obama, of course. As far as that, the National Drug Control Policy, when you said about that, oh my God, not likely. You can change the drugs designation, but it's not likely given the current science. The current science, see, there's kind of a problem with that because we haven't actually allowed. There's still a ban on doing scientific tests federally. So, yeah, the current science is actually the current science of 1940. So
right.
There's really a huge problem with that. And finally, when it comes to the football thing, I just have to point out that Denver is, quote unquote, the Mile High city. And they're going to live up to their name when it comes to the Super Bowl. I like that there are Super Bowl ads. So Roger Goodell, we kind of trashed him last night on last night's show, but actually I do agree with him on this because why shouldn't the players be able to take medical marijuana in the NFL? Why? I don't see a problem with that. So
Sean,
that's what I have to say on that.
Sean, I know you've been wanting to pipe in. What do you want to share with us?
Well, I mean, I'm going to separate the NFL story with the Obama story because the NFL is their substance abuse test, and Roger Goodell looks like, and that is Roger Goodell, Jeff, looks like he's moving in the right direction on that. So I'm going to give it I think that marijuana will be out of the testing within a few years. But this is basically what I said Obama would do when we covered the story of him changing, or of him giving that interview when he said he was pro-pot. I said that, yeah, he's saying all the right things, but he's not going to do anything substantively to change policy. And if you think about it, the scheduling for marijuana isn't even that substantive in itself because, yeah, it's Schedule 1, which I'm going to get into how that makes no sense in a minute. But, yeah, it's Schedule 1. But it's still not prosecuted at the level that the other drugs that are Schedule 1 normally are prosecuted under. Like if you have the same amount of heroin as you do pot, you get a stricter sentence for the heroin than you do the pot. So the scheduling is meaningless anyway. It's dumb because marijuana is safer than cocaine, but according to the scheduling system, it's a gateway to a safer drug, which also makes no sense. And this is just classic Obama. Like, he'll say something that sounds nice and amazing, but there's no substantive change or any change at all behind it.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, he said at the beginning of his campaign, before he was even elected, I believe that or right after he was elected, I can't remember, but it was years ago, he said that it was not a priority, that putting marijuana smokers in jail was not a priority, and that law enforcement energy should be placed in more important areas. But it's just all words. And unfortunately, many times we've seen with Obama, with him, it's just words that sound nice but actually don't lead to any substantial change. And I know that there are some Democrats and some liberals that are saying, well, you can't expect him to take that big of a hit on himself, to be the first black president and to be the first president that legalizes marijuana, but, why not? Really? I mean, if he truly is, he mentioned at one point not long ago that this was going to be his last political campaign, that he wasn't going to try to get back in the Senate or the political ring or anything like that. So if he's not, why not stand by his principles? And if he's not a hypocrite, then part of his principles should be ending this ridiculous drug war, at least regarding marijuana, especially since he smoked it himself and admits it. And the only reason that he was able to do that and still become president is that he didn't get caught.
I just want to jump
Jordan?
in and talk about, just address the point of how you said, how President Obama had said, well, yeah, putting people in jail over marijuana, that's not exactly a priority. Well, why don't you tell that to those people in the dispensaries who he continued to raid over and over again, especially in California, where it is legal to grow medical marijuana. Why don't you
Right.
ask those people in the dispensaries? And to get to your other point about why he's not doing anything, why doesn't he take a stand? Because he doesn't want to be the guy that rocks the boat. He doesn't want to challenge the establishment because he is the establishment, and the drug war, as it is being waged right now, is a huge part of that establishment. And of course he's not going to be the change guy. I said it before. He's not the change guy. Continuity on the, change on the outside, continuity on the inside.
It's typical no drama Obama. Like, he doesn't want to rock the boat, yada, yada, yada. And I'm not quite as harsh on him, I think, maybe as Ree is. Like, I think it's ridiculous that it would rock the boat, if he were to take some action on this. Like, don't get me wrong. Again, I'm totally in agreement with pretty much everything that's been said. But at the same time, the facts on the ground, the phrase we like to throw out, is that it would rock the boat. And so you do have to pick your battles. And I'm not saying that I think Barack Obama has really picked battles he should have picked, but this is one that I don't necessarily get my dander up all that much that that this isn't something he wants to go down fighting on. But I mean, at the same time, he totally should. And previous discussions we've had on this, I am the person in the group who is a little more skeptical about a lot of the medical benefits of marijuana, and just kind of accepting those, every time a Facebook post comes along about that. But at the same time, that position also requires me to be all for testing it. Like, if I'm going to be skeptical, then we have to test the skepticism. That's what the scientific method is. And so the situation we've got right now that discourages testing, that we talked about real briefly, that to me is far more inexcusable than the president not taking action, through executive means and allowing this to go to legislature, instead of it being a executive branch fight. Like, if this is going to be something that we're going to regulate and we're going to throw people in jail for years and years and years for, then we need to be looking at why we're doing that. We need to have this data here. So this circular system we've got where we can't, ease up on the scheduling of it because the data's not there, and the data's not there because we can't ease up on the scheduling of it. Like that's a really inexcusable system, and I guess if the president has the power to change that. I mean, okay, so maybe the compromise then is don't take unilateral action from an executive standpoint, even if it is constitutional to relax the laws, but direct your people to make the scheduling change, then let the science come out about it, and then Congress can act on it. Like that seems like a fair compromise to me because it gets the ball moving in the right direction, and it keeps checks and balances in place, and it's based on data. So I don't know, that seems like a battle worth picking for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the science, Jordan. I think that's incredibly important, the science and the testing, and that's something that I don't think gets discussed enough when it comes to the issue of marijuana. There's not a lot of the science that's available because there's been a block on the testing, and I know I mentioned that earlier, but I think that's really important to kind of hammer home is how are we supposed to find out all these different things when we're not testing it?
But the thing is I don't really care about how safe marijuana is. I think if you own yourself, you should be able to use any substance you want as long as you're not hurting anybody else. And the thing is, the president could easily not override state laws. Like this isn't like he's deciding that marijuana is legal on his own. Like I'm not asking him to do that because I understand that that's not legal for him to do, but you have 20 states or 20 plus states that have legalized medical marijuana. They're nullifying the federal law. Like, all I'm asking him to do is be like, all right, I'm going to respect the states' rights that I hear my Republican friends always talking about and not raid their dispensaries. And if he did that, I would be perfectly satisfied with that. I understand he can't change the law on his own, but there's no reason that he should be sending, especially when he said, I won't send my agents to override state laws because I have more important things to do. And then he raids more dispensaries in one term than George Bush did in 2 terms. Like, you just do what you said executively. Like, you can't rewrite the law and all that. And don't let guys like Mitch McConnell get ahead of you. Mitch McConnell is a co-sponsor of the legalization of hemp bill. Like, it's not marijuana, but it's hemp, which is also tied into marijuana. It's illegal. Mitch McConnell is ahead of Obama on this issue in reality, not in terms of rhetoric, which is pretty sad.
That is devastating.
I agree with you, Sean, and I kind of think out of the box on this one. I'm sort of like kind of disregarding the need for more testing. I think that testing would be great. I think that testing about what kind of the extensive nature of the medical uses of finding that out is definitely worth testing. But I don't think we need any more testing to make it obvious that we should legalize and end the restrictions against marijuana. It's obvious that it doesn't cause death. It's obvious that it doesn't cause the chaos and the death and the crime and the disintegration of your health the way that alcohol does, and it's not a health risk the way that tobacco is. So all of these things, as well as millions at this point of individuals, saying that it helps me with my pain, it helps me with my chemo, it helps me with my AIDS treatments, it helps me with my arthritis, my glaucoma. That all put together is enough, should be enough, to make it obvious without any more scientific testing necessary, to be like, okay, it's obviously not a Schedule I narcotic, and it's obviously not something that we should be putting people in jail for. It's obviously something that we need to decriminalize and look into legalizing entirely. It shouldn't be something that's like, well, the science isn't really there, but, so we can't go further on this. I think that's I think that's being cowardly about it, because, and Obama is being cowardly about it because he has the support to take this issue on if he wants to. He would have public support behind him, guaranteed. I think it's just being cowardly.
If you're going to base it on
public
support, then saying Congress should take care of this. I don't know if that's cowardly, because if Obama's got public support, then Congress should have public support behind it. So, I mean, you think, but
Well, of course, Congress are cowards too. Congress is just full of cowards. I'm not taking them out of the blame game or anything like that. But it's also like Sean says, it is a freedom issue because even if it weren't safe, we have the freedom to smoke tobacco if we want. We have the freedom to drink alcohol if we want. If it's not hurting someone else, we should have the freedom to take pretty much whatever we want.
I tend to agree with you.